My name is CBecker. I'm 38 years old. I live in St. Louis, Missouri, and I manage an art space called Mad Art Gallery in an older neighborhood of St. Louis called Soulard. If I were to describe myself in one sentence, I would say that I split the balance between being right-brained and left-brained. You would think as an artist that you're going to tend to skew more right-brained, but between the office management and trying to have an art career, I'm very much left-brained in that capacity. The most rewarding part of creating miniatures, certainly the individual pieces, to see them completed. That's nice, but when I get everything lined up on set, and that could take days. I mean, I'll shoot it from every single camera angle. I'll wait till the lighting's right. Sometimes I use studio light, sometimes I use natural light. It just depends. But when everything lines up and everything's perfectly arranged within the scene, the lighting's finally right, the camera angle's right, and you see that image come up on the back of the camera, and it looks perfect and it looks real, that's like, yeah, I nailed it. The first sets that I built were centered around domesticity. Things that people own, really, and it got a little overblown, and I ended up creating a series called Barbie Trashes Her Dream House at the tail end of 2011. And I threw it on a Flickr site. I wasn't really going to pay any more attention to it. It totally blew up, and it ended up being featured in like Huffington Post and New York Times. It was on Jezebel and Newsweek and just all these really amazing sites, and so I got a lot of feedback from that. If it wasn't for that validation, I don't know if I would have continued. My favorite project that I've done would probably just be the last one. Like I said, I still think that I'm kind of new at this, so every single set that I build, it's just that much more experience, and I get that much better. So with the last one that I built, it was inspired by Miss Havisham's dining room from Great Expectations. I'm pretty happy with that one. I think it turned out well. In terms of the types of things that I build, it can be varied, but I definitely stick to domestic scenes. I don't make people, so it's just going to be household objects mostly, but I also really like to build interiors, so walls, ceilings, floors, that sort of thing. In terms of the actual number of miniatures, if we're talking about singular objects, I'm not really sure because it's been a lot. 100? I can only guesstimate at this point. In terms of finished scenes, I'm going to say somewhere between 40 and 50. I still think I'm kind of new at this. I've only been doing it for 6 years, so and in that time, it's changed from creating hoarder scenes to scenes of abandoned houses. So the subject matter is it's a little different. It's getting more complicated actually as time goes on. So a lot of times when I make things, I consider them props for these sets that I'm making. And I don't think of them as being very permanent. So I might start with something that already exists, like a piece of doll furniture, and then I might distress it or do something to it to manipulate it to make it look the way I want. For example, I have this little Regency chair, which, it's been reupholstered, if you like, and then distressed because a lot of my current work now centers around abandoned properties. So when you look at the image, I want you to be convinced that you're looking at an abandoned house. So in terms of set construction, it varies. In the beginning, when I was kind of just experimenting and finding my way, they might not have taken very long. I could probably have knocked one out in the course of 3 consecutive afternoons. But now it's a little bit more involved. I try not to use too many pieces that already exist. I'd rather hand make everything. And so, I haven't created a log, but I would say somewhere between 200 hours or 300 hours for maybe for the very last scene that I worked on. What inspires me? Well, right now, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I've been in a lot of abandoned houses in the last few years. That sort of started as a hobby. In graduate school, I was living in Kansas, on the prairie, in this area where there are a lot of abandoned farmhouses, and I would just go in and document them, photograph them. I didn't really have any plans for the images. I just, it was just fun. That, when I, so I had that epiphany the first time I shot that tiny thing, like, oh, look what happens when you shoot it at a particular angle. When I started to build rooms, I started to draw on the imagery from the abandoned houses. When I went into a house and just documented it, it didn't feel like I was doing enough with that information. So to be able to take that and then incorporate it into a more personal vision seemed more like the right thing to do with it. I have always worked solo. I don't even have a studio assistant, so everything is made by me. I have at some points considered, asking for help in casting something, but it never comes to fruition, so I do it all on my own. So some of the biggest challenges that I face when I create miniatures, for my purposes, for my end goals, because I want to shoot them with a macro lens, every single thing has to be perfect. So like I said before, even though they're not going to be necessarily permanent, I'm not going to sell them individually, I don't sell the dioramas. On camera, you see every single flaw. So if there's a thread that's sticking out or a glob of glue, I mean, it's magnified to look like it's covered, if it's this chair and there's a glue dot on it, it looks like a slime ball. That would be challenging. So you have to go in with a magnifying glass and just make sure it looks perfect under scrutiny. I actually don't have any kids, so that frees up a lot of my time. I would be great for television because I think I have a fairly unique story to tell, even though there might be other people working in miniatures. I am making mine for a fine art end. I do have gallery representation, and I think that coming from fine art, that's a particular point of view. You're going to be able to see me working on the set, you're going to be able to see me making pieces, but you're also going to be able to see this end goal of maybe working in a gallery, people interacting with that work, and so that follows a particular narrative. If I think back to when I started 6 years ago, I could probably knock something out in the course of 2 or 3 consecutive afternoons. And that was, kind of just assembling objects that already existed. But if I'm going to build the walls, the floors, and every single piece that goes in it, depending on what that is, I mean, we could be looking at 250 hours per scene. And then that's not counting lighting and shooting it, which could take a few more days, because I got to get the lighting right. I might use studio lights, but I could also use natural lighting. So if I put something in front of a window and wait for the sun to be in the right position, that could take days. My clientele is mostly theoretical at this point. I've been showing fine art photographs at different art galleries, and that has some traction. I will say that the strange thing is that I keep running into time and time again. And this goes back to even, the very first thing that I did going viral. People are so complimentary, and they are so interested, and they want to know about the process. They want to know how long does it take, and what materials do you use, and what does your studio look like, and are you half crazy? But at the end of the day, nothing actually sells. So it leaves me in this very weird limbo of, am I successful? Am I successful if people notice me but don't buy anything? I don't know. So that's where I'm at right now.